The nurse told the parents of a newly born child, "You have a cute baby." The smiling husband said, "I bet you say that to all new parents." "No," she replied, "just to those whose babies really are good-looking." The husband again asked, "So what do you say to the others?" The nurse replied, "The baby looks just like you." An elderly couple, fresh off their 50th wedding anniversary, were sitting peacefully on the porch, each rocking in their chairs and reading. Out of nowhere, the wife reaches over and smacks her husband across the head, then calmly returns to her knitting. Stunned, the husband asks, "What was that for?" She replies, "That's for 50 years of less than stellar romance." He shrugs and goes back to his newspaper. A few minutes later, he puts it down, looks at her, and gives her a gentle whack on the head. Now she's the one shocked. "What was that for?" she asks. Without even looking up, he says, "That's for knowing the difference." Ever since 2nd grade, John had auditioned for every school play, but he never got a part, until now. Bursting through the front door, he shouted, "Dad! I finally got a role!" His father, excited for him, asked, "That's great, son. Who do you play?" John beamed and said, "I'm playing a man who's been married for 20 years and has 3 kids. His dad patted him on the back and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, son. Maybe next time you'll get a speaking part." Two guys were driving through a neighborhood when they spotted 2 dogs getting a little too cozy in someone's front yard. The driver chuckled and said, "That's exactly what my wife and I do every night." The passenger laughed and said, "Really? My wife's pretty traditional. How do you get your wife to do that?" The driver replied, "Just give her 2 drinks, works like a charm." The next morning, the driver asked, "So, how'd it go?" The passenger grinned and said, "Well, she was willing after 2 drinks, but it took 8 more to get her out on the front lawn." A blonde woman goes into an electronics store and points to an item on the shelf. "I'd like to buy this television," she says excitedly. The salesman, shaking his head, replies, "Sorry, but we don't sell to blondes." Shocked, she storms out of the store. That evening, she dyes her hair black, changes her outfit, and returns the next day. "Hi there. I'd like to purchase this television," she says confidently to another salesman. Without hesitation, he responds, "Sorry, but we don't sell to blondes." Now completely frustrated, she exclaims, "But how did you know I was blonde?" The salesman smirks and says, "Because that's not a TV, it's a microwave." Little Johnny was sitting in class one day, and the teacher was talking about life, and asked him, "Little Johnny, how do you want your wife to be like?" He answered, "Like the moon," and the teacher said, "That's such a beautiful answer because it's calm and peaceful." Little Johnny said, "No, because it appears at night and disappears in the morning." I recently picked a new primary care doctor. After 2 visits and a bunch of lab tests, he looked at me and said, "You're doing fairly well for your age." A little concerned, I couldn't help but ask, "Doc, do you think I'll make it to 80? He paused and asked, "Well, do you smoke or drink?" "Oh no, never," I replied. "Do you eat ribeye steaks or barbecue?" "Nope. I've heard red meat isn't healthy." "Do you spend time outdoors? Golf, sailing, rock climbing?" "No, I prefer to stay inside." "Do you gamble, drive fast cars, or, fool around?" "Absolutely not." The doctor stared at me for a moment, then said, "Then why do you care if you live to be 80? One stormy night, a little sister got scared and ran into her brother's room. "Can I sleep here tonight? The thunder is really scary," she asked. Her brother, half asleep, replied, "Sure, just don't tell Mom." She climbed into bed, and after a moment, she curiously pointed under the covers. "What's that?" Her brother, still groggy, said, "Oh, that's my pet snake." "Can I hold it?" she asked. Sure. Just be gentle and don't tell Mom," he mumbled before drifting off to sleep. The next thing he knew, he woke up in a hospital. Confused, he asked, "What happened?" His sister smiled and said, "I hold a snake, but it spit on me, so I bit its head off." After a night on the town, a young woman brought a new friend home for a late-night drink. "You can't make any noise," she warned him. "My parents are upstairs, and if they find out, they'll kill us." Things started getting heated on the sofa, but after a while alcohol got the better of the man. "I have to go," he said. "Well, you can't go upstairs. The bathroom is right next to my parents' bedroom," she replied. "Use the kitchen sink." So he dutifully retired to the kitchen. A few minutes later, he popped his head around the door and asked, "Do you have any toilet paper, or should I just use a paper towel?" Down in a cozy Florida mobile home park, there lived two sweet seniors, a widower and a widow, who had known each other for quite a few years. One evening, the community held a potluck dinner in the big activity center. As fate would have it, these two ended up sitting across from each other at the same table. Throughout the evening, he kept sneaking little admiring glances her way. Finally, gathering his courage, and maybe inspired by the dessert, he leaned in and asked, "Will you marry me?" She paused dramatically, exactly 6 seconds of serious thinking, then smiled and said, "Yes. Yes, I will." They wrapped up the evening with a few more kind words and went their separate ways. But the next morning, the man woke up troubled. He sat there thinking, "Wait, did she say yes? Or no? I can't remember. Oh no." Try as he might, the answer just wouldn't come back to him. Finally, he picked up the phone, heart pounding, and called her. He gently explained that his memory wasn't quite what it used to be, and then he nervously asked, "When I asked you to marry me last night, did you say yes or no?" She chuckled and said, "Why, I said yes, and I meant it with all my heart." Then after a short pause, she added, "And I'm so glad you called, because I couldn't remember who had asked me." Two guys were walking through the woods when they stumbled upon this huge, deep-looking hole. One of them says, "Wow, that looks really deep." The other nods and goes, "Sure does. Let's toss a few pebbles in and see how deep it is." So they grab a handful of pebbles, toss them in, and wait. Nothing. Not a sound. "Dang, that must be really deep," one says. "Let's try something bigger." They find a couple of football-sized rocks, chuck them in, and listen. Still nothing. Now they're super curious. Then one guy goes, "Hey, there's an old railroad tie over here in the weeds. Let's throw that in. If that doesn't make a noise, nothing will." So the two of them struggle to drag it over, count to 3, and toss it into the hole. They lean in, listening. Still nothing. Just as they're scratching their heads, a goat suddenly comes flying out of the woods, running full speed like it's in a race. It blasts right past them, and dives straight into the hole. The two guys stand there, totally speechless. A few seconds later, a farmer walks out of the woods and waves. "Hey fellas, y'all seen a goat run through here?" One guy blurts out, "We sure did. Craziest thing I've ever seen. It was runnin' like a bat out of heck and jumped right into that hole." The farmer shakes his head and says, "No way that was my goat. Mine was chained to a railroad tie." A man had a serious heart attack and ended up needing bypass surgery. Thankfully, he pulled through and woke up in a Catholic hospital, being cared for by a group of kind nuns. As he was recovering, one of the nuns gently asked him, "Sir, how do you plan to pay for your treatment?" With a weak voice, he replied, "I don't have health insurance." She nodded and asked, "Do you have any money in the bank?" "Nope, not a dime." "Well then," she continued, "do you have any relatives who could help with the bill?" He thought for a moment and said, "Only my sister. She's a nun." The nun raised an eyebrow. "Sir, nuns are not just sisters. Nuns are married to God." The man smiled and said, "Perfect. Then send the bill to my brother-in-law." A sweet, elderly couple in their 90s were starting to struggle a bit with their memory. At their regular checkup, the doctor reassured them that they were doing fine physically, but suggested they start writing things down to help remember little details. That evening, as they relaxed watching TV, the husband got up and headed toward the kitchen. "Would you like anything while I'm up?" he asked his wife. "Yes, I'd love a bowl of ice cream," she replied. "Got it. Maybe you should write it down," she gently suggested. Nah, I can remember ice cream. Well, I'd like strawberries on top. Better write that down. Ice cream with strawberries. Easy, he said confidently. Oh, and whipped cream too, she added. Please write it down so you don't forget. A little irritated, he said, I've got it. Ice cream, strawberries, whipped cream. No need to write it down. Off he went. 20 minutes later, he came back with a plate of bacon and eggs. She looked at the plate, then back at him. Where's my toast? A bloke starts his new job at the zoo and is given 3 tasks. First, he's asked to tidy up the exotic fish pool, which is overrun with weeds. While he's working, a huge fish leaps out and startles him. In his panic, he accidentally knocks the fish into a nearby wheelbarrow. Not wanting to waste it, he decides to take it to the lions, thinking, lions will eat anything. Next, he moves on to clean the chimp enclosure. The cheeky chimps are playful and start throwing coconuts at him. While dodging the flying coconuts, he accidentally knocks some over into the same wheelbarrow. Again, he thinks, well, the lions won't mind, and wheels them over to the lion enclosure. Finally, he's asked to collect honey from the South American beehives. As he carefully gathers the honey, the buzzing bees surround him. He accidentally tips the honeycomb into the wheelbarrow along with the bees. Thinking of the lions once more, he heads to their area and says, here's something sweet for dessert. Later that day, a new lion arrives at the zoo. Curious, he asks another lion, so, what's the food like around here? The lion grins and says, oh, it's fantastic. Today, we had fish and chimps with mushy bees. A man goes in for a job interview at the local council. The interviewer starts off with the basics. Are you allergic to anything? Yeah, caffeine. I can't drink coffee. Got it. Have you ever served in the military? Yes, 1 tour in Iraq. The interviewer nods. That gives you 5 extra points towards employment. Next question, are you disabled in any way? The man hesitates, then says, yeah, a bomb went off near me, and I lost both of my testicles. The interviewer winces, then says, sorry to hear that. All right, you've got enough points. You're hired. Our work hours are 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. You can start at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and from now on, just plan on coming in at 10 a.m. every day. The man is confused. If work starts at 8 a.m., I want to do my part. I'll come in at the normal time. The interviewer chuckles. Nah, you don't get it. This is a government job. The first 2 hours, we just stand around drinking coffee and scratching our balls. No point in you showing up for that. An 80-year-old man goes to a doctor for a checkup. The doctor tells him, you're in terrific shape. There's nothing wrong with you. Why, you might live forever. By the way, how old was your father when he died? The 80-year-old responded, did I say he was dead? The doctor couldn't believe it. So he said, well, how old was your grandfather when he died? The 80-year-old responded again, did I say he was dead? The doctor was astonished. He said, you mean to tell me you are 80 years old and both your father and your grandfather are both alive? Not only that, said the patient, my grandfather is 126 years old, and next week he is getting married for the first time. The doctor said, after 126 years of being a bachelor, why on earth did your grandfather want to get married? His patient looked up at the doctor and said, did I say he wanted to? A 15-year-old comes home with a Porsche, and his parents flip out. Where did you get that car? They shout. He calmly responds, I bought it today. With what money? His parents demand. We know how much a Porsche costs. Well, the boy says, this one cost me $15. The parents freak out even more. Who would sell a car like that for $15? The boy shrugs and says, the lady up the street. Don't know her name, they just moved in. She saw me biking past and asked if I wanted to buy a Porsche for $15. Oh my goodness, his mom gasps. She must be crazy. John, you go up there and see what's going on. So the dad heads up the street, finds the lady planting flowers in her yard, and introduces himself as the father of the boy who bought the Porsche for $15. He demands to know why she did it. She calmly replies, "Well, this morning I got a call from my husband, who I thought was on a business trip. Turns out, he ran off to Hawaii with his secretary. She stole all his money and left him stranded there. So, he calls me, broke, asking me to sell his new Porsche and send him the money. So, that's exactly what I did." On their wedding night, the husband turned to his new bride with a mischievous grin. Husband, "All right, do you want to be surprised first or shocked?" Wife, "Surprise me first." Husband, "Check this out, 10-inch, he said proudly, showing off. Wife, impressed, "Wow, okay. Now what's the shock?" Husband, with a sheepish look, "It doesn't stand."